Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting guest today. I'm super excited to talk to her. The interview is really going to give you something to think about, and it's all about starting over in midlife. So today you'll be meeting Sheri Miter, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who's 56 and has been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. So she knows a thing or two. She's currently a Clifton Strengths coach. And I have to say that slowly because it's easy to trip over strengths. I love Clifton Strengths, where she found her calling and now helps others find theirs. She's also the host of the Discovering Your Calling podcast. Welcome to the show, Sheri.
Well, thank you for having me, Suzy. I'm excited about this conversation.
Awesome. So I'm really glad that you're joining us. And I know we're going to have a great conversation about being a midlife entrepreneur and your story. We're going to be talking about your business and what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in your way here and there to some extent and are challenging for you in your life and maybe even in your business. So let's get started with you telling us a little bit about your story and how you became a woman in the middle entrepreneur.
All right. Well, as your introduction said, I've really been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life. Like my father will even tell stories of selling painted rocks when I was a kid. So it's always been there. But when my husband and I were first married, he's one of those rare people that knew his calling right from when he was 3 and did it. He's a professional retired professional firefighter. But when he was new, we were newly married. He was starting his business for his career. We started a chimney cleaning business. So we did that for 10 years together. And in that process, I was raising our 3 boys, but I was always looking for my thing because my life had become Justin, Jeremy, and Jacob's mom and Tom's wife.
Now, hang on. Chimney wasn't your thing?
No. No, I'm afraid of heights. So I did not go out and clean the chimneys.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also realized that, if God forbid something ever happened to him, here he is, a professional firefighter and climbing on people. So if something ever happened to him, there was nothing. I had nothing. So I was always looking for that thing for myself. And around in my early 30s, so we're not at midlife yet, I got into direct sales and network marketing, and I found my thing. And I was able, and spent 25 years there. I was that rare 1%er that did actually build a successful career there.
Wow.
And I loved it. I thought this was it. This was it for me. But about 5 years ago, so we're going to really fast forward this story. 5 years ago, I just started to have this angst. And I started to wonder, is this really it?
How old were you 5 years ago?
So I would have just been like turning 50, 51, right in that. So
right on track.
Right, exactly. So now we're at that midlife where I think we do, that 50 is a big age for us.
It's jarring. That's the word that I've come up with that I think explains it the best. Mm-hmm. It's jarring. But even if it doesn't throw you for a complete loop, it gives you pause.
It makes you pause.
Yeah.
And, and in good. And I think we can look at it 2 different ways. And I know I might get sidetracked here, but we can look at it as like, oh, I'm 50, my life's half over. Or we can look at it like, I'm 50. What do I want to do with the next few decades of my life?
Exactly.
And that's the way I looked at it. And I started just kind of, again, looking to think, maybe there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe this isn't it. And as I just keep sharing with people, I felt like I was, I'd been doing this thing for 25 years and doing it well. We did sell the chimney business, by the way, after I got successful with that. So that was out of the picture now. The boys are all grown. So now it's like my time to do something. And I felt like I just kind of opened up this curtain and peeked out. I had been in this one place for so long. That was my life. And it was a great life. But I was like, what else is out there? And that just opened up, I feel like when we take that first step towards something, things start appearing in our life.
What do you think it was, though, about turning 50 that motivated you to look out? Because you were happy. So what was it that wasn't exactly, you know, calm or comforting or peaceful or content? What was it?
One big thing was, and I have never been a super high energy person. I have high energy for short spurts and then I need to go take a nap. So that's just always been my life. But I remember one of the pivotal moments was I had just come off of our best year ever. Like we reached one of the pinnacles in that network marketing business. Yay, we did it. It was a great year. And then our year went July 1st to June 30th. And July 1st rolled around and I was out walking with a friend of mine who was in the same business, same level as I. And we realized we were back to zero again. It's a new year. And I remember saying to her, is this ever going to be enough? And I realized then I was too exhausted to go hustle again. I didn't want to hustle again.
Okay.
And I didn't want to see this repeat, even though it was a great year. It's just like, I don't have the energy to keep doing this. I don't want to keep doing this. And always feeling like, okay, we had a great year, but now we got to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to do more. So it was like, you could never arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I hustled when I was in my 30s, but I was like, I am not hustling in my 50s.
Well, and you'd been an entrepreneur for such a long time. So you were never sitting back and just expecting a paycheck because you were ticking off the boxes of your employment.
Right.
Your experience was very different. So you knew exactly what was ahead of you if you didn't make a change. That's what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah.
And there were other little things that were just happening that really had nothing to do with being 50, but just little things that kind of just led me to, okay, what else is next? But the fact that I was 50, I knew what I didn't want and I knew what I wanted. And the other piece that was pivotal that had to do with reaching midlife is my husband was going to be retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always 5 to 7 years. Because remember, he always loved he was in his calling. So he didn't want to give it up. So we always had a joke. It was 5 to 7 years, 5 to 7 years. Where then now we're down to it's 3 years away. And I knew what I was doing wasn't going to fit that lifestyle. And I also knew that if he's retired, we both want to keep working. We both know we have gifts inside of us left to, share with the world. But it's like, I don't want to be obligated to something that I don't have the freedom that he's going to have. That didn't sit well with me. So that was a big factor that I had to look into is like, okay, knowing he's going to be retired, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, that's a classic one when you and your partner aren't quite on the same retirement schedule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've seen that, like that can cause a lot of anxiety in a relationship.
Yeah. So the thing that was very clear to you was you wanted more freedom. And that relates to the grind that you knew was ahead of you to keep up the pace and not just keep up the pace, but to keep doing more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting. Right. So how did you pivot to this idea?
So when I finally came to peace that, okay, I need to retire from this thing that I've been doing for 25 years, it was a slow I gave myself a year to transition. I couldn't because I had a team of 100 women I was leading. Like I couldn't just walk away from them. So I allowed myself time to transition and stepped into calling. And when COVID hit, it identified because I had no idea. I had no idea when I decided to retire what else I would be doing. I just knew I was called to do something else. I knew strengths was going to be a piece of it because I was introduced to the Clifton Strengths while I was in direct sales, used it to become successful. So that was always something that I was super passionate about. So I knew there was that, but I didn't know what else there was. And when COVID hit, I found myself having conversations with friends of mine who owned businesses, one of which was a bridal event business. And having this, like, my strategic brain just went in high gear. And that's one of my if you're familiar with Clifton Strengths, strategic is one of my top 5. And I just went into this like, well, you could do this, or what about that? And my husband was listening to these conversations and he's like, that's your thing. That's your next thing. So he identified this next thing was coaching women in business. And honestly, Suzy, that felt good for about 6 months. And then something went off the tracks on that. Then I decided.
What went off the tracks?
People started asking me more details, and I'm not a detail person. They wanted to know how to market, how to do this, how to do that. And it's like, I don't know. I hire people for that. Like, I don't know. So And I wasn't working with a coach to identify that all I needed was a slight pivot and not this full turn. And I made the mistake. I chased the shiny thing again. Somebody told me about another program that ties in with strengths, more money, because it'd be working with corporate America, leadership, all this training. So I chased that for 6 months to a year. And that just never felt right. Because again, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a very challenging shift to be reporting to the man.
Yes. Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you leaned in. So then you just leaned into Clifton Strengths, someplace that you knew you respected and liked and felt comfortable. And that makes more sense, I guess, with your focus on strategy too.
Yeah. Yeah. So last summer, everything started to really fall into place. And I finally realized that my calling is helping people figure out their calling. And I really get joy if their calling includes running a business. Not everybody does, and that's okay. But I love to carry that all the way through. So that's where I've been the last, 6, 7 months. And that feels perfect, but it took me 3 years after I left. It took me still 3 years to figure it out. It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey, and you were always on the right path. If you look at the history of what you've been doing, even the chimney business helped propel you in a slightly different direction, but you were learning all along as you were on the path.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the midlife reality, because this is what is so fascinating and why I really wanted to dive into it on this podcast. Is there's this intersection where being an entrepreneur in your 30s and your 40s is not the same deal as being in your 50s and 60s and being an entrepreneur. So what have you noticed about that experience, that intersection?
Right. Well, the one I already kind of said was the energy level.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, it's one thing to try to hustle and do it all when we're 30 or 40 even. But when we reach 50, most of us just our energy, like you just find my husband and I have fell into at night, we're exhausted. Like, I don't want to work nights. I have to really guard my energy because I don't have the energy. And like I said, I've never been a high energy person. So my energy level is very compact. So I have to be very careful and guard that energy. And meaning in time that I put into a business. So I don't want to work 40 hours a week. I don't even know if I want to work 30 or 20 hours a week. I can do it for short spurts. So I value that freedom to take my afternoon naps and do all that, really guarding that energy. But it's also guarding the energy. I feel like in this decade, I'm clear on what I really need and want. And I'm not so concerned with what everybody else expects of me.
So can you give me an example of that? Because this for sure is something that people struggle with.
I mean, one simple example would be showing up, even social media. I just came off of another course on podcasting. And in that course, she was talking about, you've got to do the reels on Instagram. You got to be on Facebook. You got to do the show up live. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do this. And it was finally like, no, I don't have to. You have to,
I guess you have to do that if the goal that you've set needs that. Right. And I think that happens so much is that we get caught up in this compare and despair thing. And we just start, like you said, chasing shiny objects and just doing without really reflecting, wait a minute, what's my goal? And what is required from me to attain the goal that I value?
Right. And really, that's where, I pull in my strengths and realize how do I work best? And I'm a high relator. So I work best sending out a message to somebody, connecting with them one-on-one, doing those kind of things that, responds to my energy better. So I kind of, it's really looking at that, like the world may expect us to do things one way, but I think at this age, we're hopefully a little more confident that, you know what, I can do it my way now. I don't always have to fall into what everybody else expects.
Yeah. So you keep the themes for you are freedom is a big one. So you don't just you don't just not want to do what other people are doing just because, but you also want the chance to assess ongoing. And I know from some of the pre-work that you sent in that your grandkids are very important to you. So tell me a little bit about that, because it's not a midlife problem, but it's a midlife challenge, right? To spend the amount of time and help and show up the way you want when you're running a business. So let me hear a little bit about how that's going for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the misconceptions we have about life, because we know when our kids are little, we think, okay, well, this season I have to balance it all and you're trying to do it all. And we think when they fly the coop, we're done with that piece of our life, right? And then grandkids come around and we don't have to, but we want to
exactly
spend time with them.
And they're not under your roof.
Right. And for us, our grandkids, we call it the Great Eastern Triangle. We have now 3. We just were blessed with our 6th grandchild.
Amazing.
And so 3 of them, our 2 oldest and the youngest, are local to us. So they're, 15 minutes away. Then I have one second youngest grandson is in Baltimore. And then the other 2 are in Syracuse, New York. And we live in upstate New York. So we call it this big triangle.
Yeah.
And I want, again, freedom to be able to go visit them, at least every few months, to be in their space, because FaceTime's just not enough.
Yeah.
And, balancing that. And then on the flip side of that, I know where a lot of us are, or our elderly parents. So, my mother is deceased, which is, I'll come back to that in a minute. But, my father's in Louisiana, so that's not an issue in our lives right now. But my mother-in-law is local and she's in a retirement home and relies on my husband a lot for things. So there's balancing that. So you have that misconception in your 30s or 40s, I'm going to have all this freedom. And we really don't. There's
there's only a couple of years for many of us where the kids they're like young adults and they might still be on the payroll, but they don't live with you, you know what I mean? And so you might still be paying for tuition, maybe helping with rent, maybe, but they're just starting to become independent.
Yeah.
But you know what they say, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And then there's just this freedom to be able to spend your time the way you want. So the sandwich, it's not that you're raising young children and supporting senior relatives, but you want to spend time with young children.
Right.
And you still have some obligations and you want to be there for your elderly parents and in-laws and stuff. So how are you dividing your time? Are you working remote or are you just doing scheduling? What are you doing?
So a little bit of both. I did when I started designing my whatever that it was. I knew that was going to be an important piece of it, that I needed to have the flexibility to be able to work remotely. I didn't want to be obligated to an area or a spot that was going to be important. So I have purposely designed this new business to be able to work remotely so I can be anywhere, because another part of our big retirement plan is in our August 1st, we are now renting. We sold our house once our kids moved out because we didn't want them to keep coming back. It was a revolving door for a while. And when we have 3 boys. So once they were all out at one point, it's like, quick, let's sell the house. And so we rented 2-bedroom apartments. So there's room to come visit, but not live here. But anyway, our lease is up August 1st. And our plan is to, we're actually boatless right now, so we have to buy the boat, but to move on to a sailboat and travel down the East Coast this fall. So that's another piece of this too, is we're going to be doing that traveling. And I want to be able to continue to work while I'm doing that. So to still have that, basically be able to work from a laptop is my goal.
Right. That's great. Has that been something you've been thinking about for a very long time?
Yes. So we've been talking about this for probably 6-7 years. We've had actually 3 sailboats, just kept getting bigger and bigger. But we sold
That's the joke. That's the joke with sailboats. Just another foot. Just another foot.
You see, 2-foot-itis is a real thing for boaters. So yes, we have been talking about this for a long time. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of freaking me out that it's now the year that we're
And why are you freaked out?
Because it is a big, scary thing. It's a big, scary move. But
what's the scary part? Because,
no.
how it's like 10 people could interpret what you're saying, and all of us would have something about I've been on boats. I take vacations on boats, but I haven't thought about living on a boat like that. So when you think about it, what is the part that gives you the most pause?
I think not having a base place, base, because we're moving onto the boat, we'll have a storage place to keep what we want to keep. So not having that home space, is a little freaking me out a little bit. But
what does it mean to you to have that home space?
I don't know if I can put words to it. I don't know.
I've met a few people that have done this. I've made a few stability. Yeah. Because you probably prided yourself on being a stable, responsible person for the majority of your life.
Yeah.
I wonder. It's very interesting. I have met a few people who are really embracing the laptop lifestyle at different phases. And, the storage locker situation does come up, and the quality of internet comes up as things that are very important in this phase. That's really interesting. And I bet you're also pretty excited about it too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Getting back, we've been starting to look at boats because, again, we don't even have a boat right now. That's important. So starting to relook at boats again is getting us both. I think because we haven't had a boat in a year and a half, we've kind of forgotten that piece we have when we're on a sailboat. So
right.
Once we're back on one, it'll come back to, oh yeah, this is why we want to do this. And we don't know. We're both. That's the good thing. My husband and I, which is another piece I think that can fall into this age, is we're on the same page totally with this whole adventure. And that maybe a year, it may be 6 months, maybe 3 months, might be 3 years. We really don't know. Our thought is it's going to be 6 months to a year. And going back to the grandkids, my husband knows that we will always have a credit card, unlimited, to buy me airfare if I ever need to hop on a plane and be wherever I need to be, because that's, my family's important to me. So, and that's that's totally understood with that. But I do see that with friends of ours, and if the husband and wife are not on the same page in this new decade, that can raise up some issues for sure. For sure.
So the biggest issues for you so far, as we're talking about it, is the energy has been a bit of a distraction or a challenge, and visiting the grandkids and making a schedule around all of that in a way that supports that priority. It's a priority for you. And it's a little challenging because there's 3 sets of them and they live in different places. So balancing all that, your husband being retired and you not being retired, you being quite energized as possible in this phase about your new phase, and allowing time and space for this dream you have that includes boating and a lifestyle, including working on the boat. And then, is there anything else that you think about as you're, running your business that is kind of a little wonky or unpredictable as a result of being in midlife?
Well, I know you and I talked about this earlier, technology. And I don't know if that's where you want to go or not, but that to me is, and I think it is a huge thing. So I do want to stay on this note.
Sure.
I feel like I used to feeling like I had to have the technology down, or even being able to create things the way everybody else I see does it. I would let those things stop me.
Like what? Give me an example of that.
So I'm launching a group program that's coming out next week based on our conversation today. I don't know when this, it'll probably be long gone once this airs, but
yeah.
And I felt like I had to create this beautiful sales page for it, all the details of it. And I spent a day and a half working on it. And again, I wasn't happy with it. Didn't feel right. I didn't have all the pieces. The links weren't, just all the tech stuff behind the scenes just wasn't coming together. And I finally said, you know what? The women I work with, the women you work with at 50 something, they're not working with me because I can create a beautiful sales page.
Yeah.
they're working with me because of what I'm offering them and who I am. And so I scratched all that, had one I already had that I was happy with, adjusted it so it worked right, created a simple little email and said, because my issue was I was having with the technologies, I wanted to be able to offer one full payment plan and the monthly payment plan. And that was hanging me up. Like I spent a day trying to figure it out.
And talk about energy. Like when you start to feel overwhelmed by anything, but overwhelmed by tech, then your brain goes nuts and you start to have all these thoughts about your ability, the way you're struggling. You may even consider that it has to do with age, or many of us worked for other people in the past where there was a tech department or somebody you could call to get support. And as entrepreneurs, we often don't have that kind of backup.
There's no IT department.
And there's this pressure to move forward in a certain way, and our mindset isn't supporting us at all. So it's very easy for all of that kind of spin and thinking to create a ton of negative emotion for us. And then that has other spin-offs of procrastination, beating ourselves up, starting to feel like very judgmental about our ability. It just takes you down a negative rabbit hole and ends up just compounding the procrastination, and it creates more distance between you and the result that you're trying to create. So 100%. It can be really challenging.
Like I literally, my body, like I had such major headaches for 2 days.
I've cried. I've cried.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've also felt like I climbed a mountain when I figured something out. Like it's, and other people don't even bat an eyelash. When I speak to my VA sometimes, last night I had her basically hold my hand. I was using new software for something. I was afraid of it. So I asked her to set it up, and I asked her to just be on the phone with me the first time I clicked it, because just clicking into it and seeing everything was very admin-y type of stuff. And I was just like, like you, I could just feel my body tense up, and having her just be on the phone and hold my virtual hand made all the difference, even though I could pretty much anticipate what she was going to say.
Right.
It's, I always say, I think it goes back to 1981 when I had an issue in the high school computer lab, and like I pressed something, everything disappeared, floppy disk time, and then everything went down the tubes. And, back then you click on something, you lose stuff.
Right.
It's not the same anymore. But no, I totally hear what you're saying.
That can still happen.
It can.
That happened too, though.
It can, but
usually, an IT department can find it for you.
Yeah, that's right. That is true. That is true. So when you get overwhelmed by tech, do you definitely relate it to a midlife, like having more tech anxiety or challenges because of your age and stage?
I do, because I feel like, and I say that only because I watched like my kids and now my grandkid. I mean, my 7-month-old grandson, like he grabs a hold of the phone. Like they grew up with this literally since, well, not my kids, but their kids are growing up with technology as a piece of their life. We didn't have that,
So
we
true.
Didn't do that. And it's been a slow curve. And I do feel like, for me, the learning curve, it gets smaller or larger, however you want to word.
Bigger. I think it's a bigger.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there is that piece that, because the whole physical, like literally for the last, finally yesterday, I was just like, I'm done. Like, here's a quick email and it's working. It's like, yay. But the 2 days before that, I was just exhausted with a headache. Like, I don't even want to do anything. My energy, definitely not. And I know the energy I was giving the world was not good.
Yeah, it all is related. And again, this is one of my main motivators for this podcast, because I've been podcasting for a long time, since 2017, and talking about midlife issues, but I wasn't zooming in as much to this specific intersection where you can have a very successful business and midlife can still get in the way. And it doesn't mean it grinds you to a halt. It doesn't mean that, but it can be very painful, very frustrating. And like I was saying, it can really affect your confidence, your ability to accept yourself, and lots of judgment. And then there's a lot that you can't control. Mindset you can work on, but there are some things that pop up, landmines, as I like to call them. Sometimes they're not that serious, but sometimes they are. And
Right.
yeah, there's just a lot going
Yeah.
on. Like you couldn't control where your kids are going to move. And now you've got the triangle, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's affecting your life, and it's affecting a lot of your life as an entrepreneur and your scheduling and all of that. Anyway, I love that you love what you're doing, and you being an entrepreneur for 30 years or more. Like that's really amazing. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wasn't until I turned 50. So that's great. So where is the best place that you can be found? Is it your website?
Maybe by time this airs, it might be. Right now, today, it needs to be revamped. Because I did change direction so many times.
So how is Facebook? Is Facebook the best place?
Facebook is
awesome.
Absolutely. I hang out on Facebook a lot, too much.
And what's your thingy?
I am easy to find. I am just Sheri Miter. It's SHERI. So one R, one I, Miter, MITER. So
there's a dot, right?
There is a dot, yes.
Yeah, Sheri.Miter.
Sheri Miters.
Okay, and I'll absolutely have that link for it. And you notice how I said thingy and I didn't correct myself because I knew that you knew what I was talking about.
Exactly.
Thingy is fine.
Yes. And my the Discovering Your Calling podcast is a good way to, follow me better because that's my best stuff goes on the podcast.
That's great. And if you had one piece of advice, especially based on strengths and what you know about strengths, what would you say to midlife women navigating the midlife waters as an entrepreneur?
I would say, where you are today is a beautiful place because you may not feel this right now, but you have brought with you skills, life experiences. You have natural talents and gifts that have been with you all along. You may need to uncover them now, but you have so much to give the world. So just take the time to tap into it and share with them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time from your day to share all this amazing stuff. I really appreciate how challenging and fun it is to find your calling, and how challenging it can also be to balance your energy in your business and set realistic goals that support the lifestyle that you really are going for. Lots to sort out in midlife. Totally love what you're doing. Love your plan on the boat. You're amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And that's basically it for now. So if you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are also great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and a six-figure entrepreneur would like to come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We would love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening, and it's never too late for you to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.